We'll call this special meeting of council to order, and we'll turn it over to the OPP representatives that are here.
Well, thank you very much for having us today. Just a quick introduction. So there's three of us from the OPP here today. Myself, Pam Ford. I'm the contract analyst assigned to assist the town of Espanola through the costing process. With me, I also have my supervisor, Leanne Spong. She's the case manager for all of the amalgamations and all costings with regard to the OPP. And I have Inspector Yves Frechette, who is the detachment commander for East Algoma, and he'll be here to answer the majority of the questions, which actually are operational based. So, as you're aware, throughout the costing process, we have like a single line of questions, so they flow between myself and your CAO, Cynthia Townsend. And the reason we ask for them in writing is it's easier for us to make sure we address everything, all the questions that you guys have, so we're not missing anything. But just in case you have additional questions, that's why we brought a few people here today. So Leanne's great when it comes to the finance piece, and Eve is great when it comes to the operations piece. And I'll just make sure one of them answers it if I can't. So I was given from Cynthia 2 sets of questions. So I want to make sure we address everything. I got one set, which is 28 questions, I believe. I got this one a couple of weeks ago, and then I got the other piece of paper, which has 8 questions, I believe, 7 questions. The reason I want to make sure I answer them separately is it's not up to me to determine if they were the same kind of thing. I want to make sure that nothing was missed, and I want to make sure it's open and transparent. So I'll just start with the bigger piece of paper, the one with 28 questions. This is the first that I got. And then I guess what's probably the easiest thing is I'll just read out the question, I'll read the answer, and then if there's any additional information you guys have, you can ask it at the So the question runs, would there ever be an occasion when Espanola would not have at least one officer in the town to respond for calls? So our answer to that is, should the scheduled platoon members be unavailable to attend to an urgent call for service within their assigned zone, which is on other calls, in court, or away from training, etc., officers from other neighboring zones and or detachments, as well as the CSO and court officers will respond to that call for service. The integrated service delivery model essentially combines all available officers within patrol zones and neighboring areas to provide a larger number of officers to draw from for all major occurrences and to respond to any calls for service should scheduled members be unavailable. This model also provides flexibility in terms of overall supervision. The Espanola, Sudbury, and East Algoma detachments also maintain very close working relationships and all remain at each other's immediate disposal in the event of a major occurrence. Officers in a detachment are not designated as a municipal or provincial officer and will often work in multiple locations during the shift. So one thing too I wanted to say, and I should have said at the beginning, all these are given electronically for Cynthia, so Cynthia can post them to your public website. None of these are private or confidential in any means, and the answers as provided here will be available for you guys to post. So, do you have any questions operationally?
I don't know who put the question in, and that's irrelevant. And I'm thinking what they're implying in that is, and I know what you're saying with the CSO and the court officers, those are predominantly on day shift. They're going to be maybe after hours.
Right,
but you will have other detachment people in the area.
I was going to jump in and elaborate on that because I think I know where you're headed. So essentially, as the shift supervisors, what we expect from them. So for example, you remember the presentation, we had the 3 different zones, for example, of the cluster. We had the municipal zone, or the town zone as we know it, and I'll use the Espanola provincial zone, for example. So as a shift supervisor, what they're directed to do, what we expect from them from an operational piece, is we don't necessarily wait to not have any officers in a zone to then respond with it in a reactive fashion. What we do is we manage our resources proactively using the integrated model, for example. So I'm going to say if I was to be a shift supervisor and I know that my Espanola town zone, let's call it that for the purpose of our conversation, is tied up in court, or if it's after hours on a Saturday, they've called in sick, for example, or something like that, that supervisor has to, and it's expected of them, that they will take an officer from the neighboring zone, and they'll be assigned that for their shift. So, and that's done in a proactive manner. It's not done in a reactive manner. It's because it, again, to touch on the integrated service delivery model, If you have 3 cruisers, for example, on the Highway 17 corridor, you're gonna take 1 or 2 of those and you're gonna assign them proactively within the zone. So basically what we're doing as the shift unfolds, because everything, I mean, it could change throughout the shift.
It's fluid.
It's fluid. Basically, we make sure that those resources, using all of our available resources, are deployed equally and evenly throughout all our zones.
Just for clarification, I remember when you said that night.
Okay, so number 2 was a technical question, just so you are, because this deals with a very specific piece of technology, I actually had to get the question answered from our Communications Technology Services Bureau. So there's very little I'm going to be able to add to this one. So the question was, please give a brief description of Fleet Tracker and its impact in responding to calls for service. So the OPP Fleet Tracker is not utilized for responding to calls for service or emergency dispatching. OPP Fleet Tracker is a lightweight web interface providing situational awareness for all OPP vehicles equipped with a modem providing GPS satellite tracking capabilities. The platform offers real-time GPS tracking of multiple vehicles in a web browser. A live view of the entire vehicle fleet gives you an overview of a situation and specific resources can be deployed for specific situations and/or followed when required. Alerts and notifications are instantly available within the application. The majority of all frontline OPP vehicles have been equipped with a modem accompanying the mobile workstation equipment as well as all motorcycles.
And what that's saying is, you know where
We
your
know
stuff
where
is all the
cars
time.
So the primary focus on that was driven for officer safety. So therefore, every uniformed cruisers will know where they are. The one thing that's not in here that I want to elaborate on is detachment commanders have access to this. Some shift supervisors do as well. So even myself, or as a chief, we will know exactly where all our cars are. And that's useful to go back to the first question. Then you can say, why do I have 5 cars here when I don't have one in that zone? So that's how we can double check or make sure that our officers are where we've told them to be. So it is used in that perspective by the detachment commander and addressed accordingly.
Good.
So number 3 was kind of a repeat. There is a bit of a thread through this. Will the OPP use a staggered shift format as they do elsewhere so that there's a unit on patrol at all times within the time limits? The integrated service model ensures there's always someone available to respond to call for service. See questions 1 and 26 for more details on staffing and integrated service delivery, and perhaps
We currently use staggered shift systems now in all of our detachments. If, for example, I'll use, if you have your general shift starts 6 to 6, we will, generally speaking, have a staggered shift, so half of the platoon would be 5 to 5 or 7 to 7, depending on what the operational needs of each individual detachment. They're all different, but yes, the answer is that we do have a staggered shift system.
Because the ones that are in the Espanola zone will be going out there to start their shift. And I think that's what the concern was, is they're both going out there, and the guys leaving shift are both going out there,
That's
there's
right.
nobody here.
So what we try
staggered
to
shifts,
do,
you
and in
eliminate
fact, some of our bigger clusters, our staggered shifts are 3 hours apart. So instead, we'll have half that'll be 6 to 6, the other will be 3 to 3. So that is all dependent on the operational needs of each geographical area, but the answer is yes, there's a staggered shift system.
Is there, it says here, always someone available. Is there ever a gap?
No, and that's what the staggered shift system is all about, to avoid that gap. Is so, to your point, is if you have everybody starting and finishing at the same time, you'll definitely have a gap of where either somebody's getting, off or on duty at the same time, which is where the problem arises. But if you have that staggered shift system, you'll always have a car ready to respond.
So the staggered offset here is basically because when people, or when the officers are ending or starting their shift, right?
So avoid
If they have
mass
lots of
shift change at
work.
the same time is what it is.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and is that every second township? Would that be fair
Every
to say?
detachment commander kind of operates the staggered shift system based on their own individual operational needs.
Okay.
Some detachments that have major core obligations, their day shift has a staggered shift system to make sure that our court security piece is addressed in a timely fashion. Others They have more, and it's also based a lot of with a consultation with the police service board in some cases, for example. I know my shift, staggered shift system was in consultation with some of my police services board in my area as well, to address their own specific community needs.
Okay, so this was done within the community itself?
Correct.
Okay.
So what's happening, for example...
Because I understood it was...
Yeah, so what's happening, for example, in James Bay cluster, and what's happening in East Algoma is different.
Yes.
Because it's based on those individual operational needs, and the same would apply for Espanola should amalgamation occur. So basically, it'd be based on what is the operational needs in this area, and what do we need to do to ensure that there's no gap in that coverage based on what's going on in this area.
So the schedule for this area hasn't been developed yet?
It hasn't been
Of course,
developed yet.
no.
Because I know what you want.
No.
Okay.
But it'll be done, determined based on what is the operational needs.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
So number 4 deals, so it just so happens not only am I the contract analyst for this, but I'm also the server 911 manager for contracts as well. The difficulty in answering number 4 was, I think, an understanding of what is 911 and what is dispatch. So they are two very different things, which I'd be glad to speak to you after if anybody has more questions, because they are two different functions. 911 and dispatch are different. So I've tried to answer that as well as I can in your question. So the question was to confirm Espanola is dispatched from North Bay. So, and then what is the average time before a 911 phone call is answered by that center? So the 911 center is, if you choose to have 911, the OPP do your 911, that would be out of North Bay. 911 is, you have the ability to hire anybody you want of the primary PSAP companies that do it. So we are a service provider, but you have a choice of whoever you want. So if you choose to have OPP as your primary PSAP, which is your public safety answering point, yes, that is North Bay. Your dispatch portion, which is the secondary PSAP for this area, which is included in your cost of policing. So the dispatch portion or secondary PSAP is North Bay for your area. Okay, so every municipality in Ontario has the ability to choose their telecommunications 911 provider. If the town of Espanola chooses the OPP to provide their primary PSAP or public safety answering services, 97.7% of all calls received by the OPP Provincial Communications Standard were answered within the first 12 seconds or less. Then that is for 911 emergency, urgent, and administrative calls. The secondary PSAP service or dispatch is provided by the OPP and is an included cost for policing services. The service is provided from the North Bay Communications Center for Espanola. 911 primary PSAP is not the same as dispatch, which is secondary PSAP. So if you have questions with regards to that, it can be quite detailed. I'll be glad to answer them probably after this or in consultation with your current dispatch. Number 5 is please provide a brief summary of the mobile workstations and the benefit. So again, the mobile workstation answer comes from Communications Technology Services Bureau, which did the fleet tracker answer. So the mobile workstation infrastructure utilizes Panasonic ruggedized tablets docked to an in-vehicle docking station. The tablets run on standardized Windows 7 image using Bell Mobility and Nortel VPN client for internet and OPP application access such as MPS and niche RMS, which is the records management system. The current infrastructure includes the following hardware components, which is a docking station, a keyboard, a barcode reader, a thermal printer, a cellular modem, and cellular antennas. The benefits include visibility in the community as officers can complete some tasks while on the road and not in the office.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. A real simplified answer to that. This is a corporate answer, but the mobile workstation is all of our frontline cruisers are all equipped with mobile workstations. And so let's use our frontline constables for the purpose of the example. The constable's office, we do not have big desktop computers in there anymore. There's a big screen, there's a keyboard and a mouse, but we have a docking station. So an officer, basically, they have their tablet, which is the mobile workstation. That's docked into the detachment, their office, when they're working in the office, so everything they're doing in there is basically off of this computer system, off the tablet. When they go out on the road, they simply grab this tablet, it's about this big, they take, they put it in the car, plug it in, and everything that's have access in the office and detachment, they now have access in the car. The advantage of that is very obvious, is that they can do their work pretty much anywhere that they would be able to, back in days past, have to go to the office to do it. Now they can all do it from the car.
And that was the whole point of the question, really, is the fact is that you guys are, with the use of these, you have, your officers are on the road more, you're much more efficient.
It's the exact same computer system that they have in their office. Basically is what it is.
Yep.
So question number 6 was Espanola PD does some 60 to 100 hours of foot patrol monthly. Will the OPP provide this as part of the regular duties, and will it be to those various Espanola requests? So there's a common thread in here again with regards to the answer, which is the town of Espanola Police Services Board will meet regularly with the detachment commander to discuss the delivery of services to the municipality, including foot patrol if required. The detachment provides foot patrol to its municipalities all year long, as well as focused and directed foot patrols to areas identified as requiring foot patrol to address issues with youth, mischief, and community relations. These strategies will also be available to the town of Espanola. So a lot of questions come back to if you already have it within your town and it's important for your town, in consultation with the detachment commander or police services board, they would do whatever they could to make sure that those programs continue.
Is that included in the cost proposal?
Well, that's regular work.
That's part of the service
Part of the
delivery.
package,
Yeah,
okay.
that's part of our everyday operation, service delivery.
So number 7 was EPD provides roughly 130 hours a year to local schools, including visits and presentations, plus about 30 hours of DARE. Will OPP provide this as part of the regular duties or as an enhancement? In the proposed detachment structure, which is part of the presentation slides that you guys had in September, the organization chart shows that Espanola Detachment will have a full-time community service officer in the detachment area. You are correct that the detachment commander will allocate the police resources to meet community demands as expressed through your police services board without incurring additional costs. However, additional costs would be incurred should the town wish to have dedicated, which is to Espanola only, resources performing a specific duties on a full-time basis. And that would be an enhancement, which is something we haven't discussed with you. The detachment and the region feels that most of your services will be provided by regular officers, but if that was something you wanted to consider later, which is what's considered an enhancement or a dedicated service, which is one body doing one job solely, that could be looked at as well. But the region and the detachment believe that they can fulfill your requirements with the staffing structure that's proposed.
Which is pretty much what we do everywhere else already.
In small communities, I don't think you'd have somebody doing it 8 hours a day every day. Probably in larger centers, you might have, where you have to do more of that, you would probably need somebody dedicated every day.
But the proposal, as outlined at the, when we had the presentation, is that we did put a full-time community service officer based on.
Located here.
Yes.
Yep. Number 8, would escorts for events including funerals, parades, and presence at community events such as fires be an enhancement? The detachment commander will work with the board to discuss community events. The OPP has an auxiliary program which may be available to assist at local events. We didn't quite understand what you meant by funerals, so we didn't know if that was a paid thing, like is that a paid duty kind of thing? We discussed that with Cynthia, and we weren't quite sure exactly what that was, but any kind of community event.
Steve could probably answer that better than anyone.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I know at one time you could request it, but I don't know from that end. You could request it, and if they were available, they did.
Actually,
They
I
weren't
I think it's the same.
Looking at my phone, this is number 8,
Yeah.
for providing escorts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for funerals.
Yeah, we do it every time we're asked. Like if we have a priority
So-
call, we're on.
Well, that-
no,
yeah.
that we can't, but it's extremely rare that we don't make it. Very rare, very, very rare.
From an OPP perspective, we have a policy, we do not do funeral escorts. We will do them for a high profile, members of the community, like a one-off. We put an operational plan for that. But for every day, the funeral home's calling for John Smith to do a funeral escort, we don't do it.
And I don't think,
Yeah.
there's always requests from people to have it either, eh? Or does it come from
It's
the
usually
funeral
comes from the
home?
funeral home.
Oh, it usually comes.
Yeah, it's
from
not the family that asks for it.
Is that because they have to cross through the lights? And they want to stick together?
It's safer because they want to stick together and they're entering onto a highway from a side street type thing, so they all just stay together. And also, it's just a real dignified thing to happen.
For sure.
And there's some officers that actually get out and do
Oh,
it,
yes.
you know, and that really
Yeah.
Yeah.
causes some tears in families' eyes when their family member gets that type of
For
respect.
funeral escort,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we won't follow it, do a procession through town, we won't do that. But if they're calling, we need a hand to pull out of the parking lot, we'll do that.
Okay.
But to do the full procession.
Oh, no, I
around
don't
town-
think Steve does that either.
Yeah,
They
we
do-
lead it to the highway.
They do the highway
Oh, I see.
entrance.
So we stop traffic and
Yeah.
then they continue on their own.
That's right, they do a nice job there.
Yeah,
So
And they
that-
do something, I've seen it,
yeah.
But
So
the
then
part
you do
about-
the same. You would do the same then?
if they're available.
If they're available.
Well,
Right,
that's
okay.
what Steve,
If we're
if his guys are called on something else,
Yeah.
they're not gonna be there, I mean, priorities.
That's right. But then the other part of the question which dealt with parades and the community events, that is any discussion with the detachment commander and, and the services board.
Okay.
Number 9 is ride program auto and snow machine. Is ride program auto and snow machine part of regular duties? Will revenue from any provincial funding still come to the town? So the answer is the Manitoulin Espanola Detachment already provides marine ATV and snowmobile patrol in the surrounding area, and as such types of patrols would continue and include the town of Espanola. So the provincial funding piece, I'm guessing you're talking with regards to your POAs and that. Whatever is in place now, continue.
She gets her by grant.
Yeah, you got the
They
right
have to
one.
apply for the ride grant, so you have to apply for that. We don't
Yep.
apply for that.
No, I realize that.
Yeah.
The question was, that- so we
Yeah.
will still be able to collect the
Yeah.
ride grant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 10, will provincial security funding come to town? The only grant that the OPP manages is the Port Security Prisoner Transfer Grant. We provide all of our municipalities with a credit memo, which they decide which program area they would like to use that credit for. All other grants are between the municipality and the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services. So the short answer is yes. If you apply for the grant, you'll still get it. Number 11, will OPP respond to wildlife emergency calls as part of regular duties? The OPP will respond to all calls for service for public safety endeavors. So I wasn't sure if that was targeting something specific. I wasn't quite sure, but if you call us, we will come. I think. Number 12, please provide more detailed response to law enforcement than was given at the presentation on the 20th. So the OPP can provide bylaw enforcement if mutually agreed upon, with the exception of building code and animal control bylaws. However, it is our experience that it is more cost efficient for a municipality to have its own bylaw officers managing and enforcing municipal bylaws. The OPP is available to assist and provide support in relation to bylaw enforcement. However, bylaw calls are billable under the OPP billing model and the town's billing method following the transition contract period. So in short, the answer to that is, so for example, things like building code and all that, we have no ability to change or affect any of that, so that's on you guys. There are small portions that can be discussed between the detachment commander and region, and that might be something that's parking or noise or something like that, and that would be in consultation between the municipality, the police services board, the detachment and region, and how that will lay out. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
But it counts as a calls for service.
It does count as a call
Yeah.
for service.
If let's say you're driving around and we have for example, we have a parking bylaw in the wintertime, and you notice a car that's breaking that bylaw, okay? How do you do anything at all to help the bylaw officer so that maybe you take a photograph or record the license plate number and send it
Usually
into
those
the town so
discussions-
we can prepare a ticket?
Usually those discussions will take place between the detachment commander and police services board ahead of time, so we know what that game plan is before we get into these what-if scenarios, if I can call them that.
Sure.
So,
Would that be just part of your proactive policing in a case like that where you're not writing a ticket, you might just make a
if that's what
little
the
note of a
detachment
thing?
commander and
and-
police services board
Yeah.
have agreed on and decided on.
Yeah,
Yes, but if you were to decide, or if we decided that you write a ticket, then you would do that as well.
and then we would pay for that.
Yeah, but then it's
It
a
would
call
be a
Yeah,
call for
sure.
service.
Yes, then it
Yeah.
becomes a calls for service.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's why those conversations with the detachment commander and the police services board or important ahead of time, because then it
Right.
affects your costing, right? As far as a call for service.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, number 13, summarize what you provide for victim services. This one is lengthy because it's kind of an open question. So, and again, Eve is here so that whatever questions arise out of your initial question, here's here to answer. So section 42(1)(c) and B of the Police Services Act statutorily prescribes the duties of a police officer to include assisting the victims of crime and preventing crimes and other offenses, and providing assistance and encouragement to other persons in their prevention. So every OPP detachment in Northeast Region has an agency agreement in place with victim services agencies within their respective area, which currently includes the Espanola area via the Espanola/Manitoulin OPP detachment. The victim services agencies utilized by the OPP are recognized not-for-profit organizations whose objectives are to lessen the impact of crime and trauma through support services to victims, to increase victims' level of empowerment and participation, to increase victim safety, and to help prevent victim re-victimization. These services are delivered by highly trained volunteers and offer on-scene support, emotional assistance, information referrals, and personal safety planning to victims of crime and trauma 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The OPP works alongside victim services agencies within their respective areas to ensure that victim services are provided appropriately, effectively, and in a timely manner within the communities we serve. So was there any specific question with regards to victim services?
No, it was a general question to make sure that it's because it's one of the questions I've heard several times within the community.
Okay.
And so the answers this way are provided by you rather than me.
All right. Thank you. Number 14, obviously the OPP would integrate into the town's emergency plan is participation in legislative requirements of tabletop mock exercises as a part of normal service or enhancement. And this would be part of normal services in consultation with the detachment commander. So I'm sure that's all your emergency planning. Espanola PD maintains an autism registry for local residents. Would the OPP do this? The detachment commander will provide services that are operationally feasible as advised by the Espanola Police Services Board. If this practice was followed by the EPS, then it would be discussed as a local priority and objective between the Espanola Police Services Board and the detachment commander. Is there anything more on that?
No, I think that's pretty straightforward.
Okay, number 16, would the OPP assume the duties of EPD regarding the crossing guard program, and if so, would this be regular duty or enhancement? The OPP does not provide crossing guard services. However, the detachment commander will work with the board to participate in directed enforcement programs and other community initiatives.
Okay.
Number 17, would OPP offer vacation watch for properties, and if so, is this an enhancement? Again, the detachment commander will provide services that are operationally feasible as advised by the Espanola Police Services Board. If this practice was followed by the EPS, then it could be discussed as a local priority between the Espanola Police Services Board and the detachment commander. However, having said that, whatever plan is in place now, once discussed, might not have the same vision later on. So again, whatever program you have now might change, might be in or might not be, right? So again,
Money collected, I believe we get, maybe I'm wrong, do we get revenue for police checks of houses there? No, we don't, eh? But if there was a cost associated with that, that may be something we would want to do down the road. Would that be possible if we were to?
It would come through us, but.
yeah. So the I guess what it is right now is we don't really have, because we're on the outside, we really don't have an inside look of what your vacation watch means.
Sure.
So I would hate to put forward something operationally today that is
Sure.
not going to be installed later. So that's a conversation for you guys later.
But in general terms, I can tell
Yeah.
you that we do not maintain a vacation watch registry
Right.
and go around and physically check people's homes that are away on vacation.
Right, but you do that anyway, right? Like, I mean, you're gonna do it whether they're home or
Yeah,
not.
part of the focus patrols, like
Right.
we have like in our cottage areas where there's a lot of
Certainly.
seasonal cottages, we do increase our focus patrols in this area to just kind of keep watch over the entire neighborhood.
Okay, and that makes sense. I mean,
But Joe Gould comes in the office, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks, can you put my name in the book and go check my
That
house
doesn't
every day?
exist with us.
To make sure it doesn't freeze up and that?
I don't think they do
No.
that.
no.
No. They just go and
I
they
think
might,
once
when
it's-
they're doing their round,
Yeah,
they
people
would look at the
call.
property, make sure everything's
normal?
People will call and say, I'm going for the weekend, or I'm
Yeah.
going for 2 weeks, or I'm going for 2 months, and this is where I live, and here's a key holder should something happen in my absence, and when your officers have time, can you take a walk around the house? So it's not necessarily done daily, or twice a day, or, you know, it's one time, and
Yeah.
particularly if there's a problem in that neighborhood.
And it may not be done at all.
Yes, right.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so number 18, EPD is involved in a program with community partners to address the situation regarding heavy users of the system and propose changes to the Police Act, and I include developing such programs. Does the OPP have a plan to integrate into this and as part of regular duties? So we had a bit of a, I couldn't quite interpret what the question meant, because I think maybe this is something that was very specific, perhaps a program for that this EPD. So I tried to answer as best I could, which is the OPP uses Ontario's mobilization and engagement model with community policing to engage with local partners and stakeholders to address the needs of the community. The model elicits the engagement of community agencies and partners to develop strategies that support public safety and reduce calls for service. The implementation of Ontario's mobilization and engagement model of community policing has been a priority for the OPP. The concept of community policing is realized when police mobilize, engage, and partner with members of the community to prevent crime and reduce victimization. The intelligence-led and consultative approach to crime prevention employed by the OPP has resulted in effective and proactive programs for deterring and reducing crime, as well as fostering relationships necessary to aid in solving crimes that do occur. Research, development, and implementation of various programs are collaborative processes. Police Services Board play an important role in determining objectives and priorities for the provision of police services. The Espanola Police Services Board would have to be maintained should the municipality choose to opt for the police service delivered by the OPP. The detachment commander of the Espanola Manitoulin Detachment would be responsible for managing the police service and overseeing its operation in accordance with objectives, priorities, and policies established by the board. But we just weren't quite sure what your, if you had something actually called community partners, or what you described.
No, I think that's something that was just being developed now as we're going forward, so.
Okay.
I do have a question though. Does it have to be a police board set up for this, or could it just be a council committee?
No, the whole, and that's with all police agencies.
Sure.
It's not just with the OPP.
Yeah.
The Ontario Mobilization and Engagement Model is exactly just that. The police and the community working together on whatever the community goal is, like having a situation table to address homelessness maybe in the community, if that's the problem. And that could involve the different community service stakeholders that you have in the community. It doesn't necessarily involve the Police Services Board or council, for example.
Right.
It could be on mental health, could be to address homelessness, could be to address drug or alcohol or abuse issues, for example. So whatever the situation is, the detachment commander or the local detachment would work with those partners and stakeholders within the community on solving those problems. Basically engage, mobilize everyone, right? The detachment commander, just as the chief of police though, we do report back to the police service board, say, hey, this is what's going on in town. We've got a situation table, we've got this working group. Basically, the detachment commander would basically keep the police service board informed and up to date as to what those initiatives are. The board themselves though may have, through consultation of their own with the public, say, hey, we've identified this as a problem as a board, and what do you do? And then off we go and reach out to some partner building relationships.
Along the North Shore, you are doing policing for small communities there. Do you meet regularly with a board that's, I guess, members from each area, Spanish River, Baldwin, Hyman?
So, for example, as a detachment commander, I have 7 police services boards in my area, and I have to meet with them. I meet with them regularly, at least quarterly, every single one.
And more often if they request it?
More often if they request it, yes. And we also are proactive. We use a proactive approach. And I know as chief or as a detachment commander, if there's an issue going on that, listen, we've got to let the board know about this right away. We don't wait for a meeting or whatever. We have a mechanism to reach out to the chair, for example, to say, this is what's going on, letting you know, or we might have to have a meeting, or just something I just couldn't wait to the next meeting to tell you, for example. So.
Okay, number 19, will the OPP work with communities to identify and help apply for grants? The town of Espanola would be aware of any grants provided to the municipality for policing. The OPP would administer the court security prisoner transport grant, but any other grants are administered by the municipality. An example of the same would be the annual ride grant. So it's a municipal responsibility to apply for grants. Number 20, does the OPP conduct individual detachment performance audits and provide results to the municipality, and are they public? So the OPP's Quality Assurance Unit promotes a culture of continuous improvement within the OPP by providing services at the corporate, regional, and detachment levels to ensure compliance with provincial adequacy standards and the OPP ministry policies. The Quality Assurance Unit provides the following services: the management inspection process, which is ensuring that the detachment commanders are fulfilling their policy obligations. Quality assurance toolkits and standard operating procedures such as posters, manuals, audit checklists, and resource links. On-site inspections to ensure compliance review, an audit of select high-risk operational areas, and that includes things such as bolts and weapons and things like that. The analysis of patterns, trends, and systemic issues are provided to senior management, and the program reviews and other audit services. The Quality Assurance Unit ensures sound processes are incorporated into everyday operations to provide accountability, consistency, and reliability. Key components include identifying improvement opportunities, minimizing risk, safeguarding of assets, and ultimately protecting the reputation of the OPP. The results are not available to the public. However, key results of the audit may be shared with by the detachment commander to the police services board.
OPP doesn't go through ministry audits, so
That are quality assurance units?
like the Ministry of Correctional Services, Community Service and Corrections.
No, but all of the standards from that are managed through our quality assurance units. It's the same standard. There's one layer there that when we talk about the individual detachment performance, one thing I want to touch on is the detachment commander is held at a high accountable of performance measures, annual, whether it be evaluations, but detachment commander is accountable on a performance measure to the regional commander. So basically our regional headquarters and our general headquarters. Detachment commander is also held accountable by the Police Services Board, just as under the mandate of the Police Services Act, there's an assessment and evaluation of the chief, for example. The same applies to a detachment commander where there's a Police Services Board. So for example, the boards that I have in my area, not only did my upper command structure, I have to report on performance measures to them, and there's an evaluation process there. I have to go through the same with my local Police Services Board in my area. So they have a say in my performance measures.
Just going back to the boards, and I remember you brought that up at that session last time about the, George just said, the boards, who determines the size of the boards? And like I know when you're doing the North Shore, you got Representatives Hyman and Baldwin and Spanish River. But should we have, I know you're going to call it Espanola Zone, who would determine the size of that board? Or would it be amalgamated with the other?
The Police Services Act.
The Police Services Act
Determines that.
determines the size of the board.
But it would be just made up of the Espanola Zone then?
That's what you chose, yeah. So
Yeah, okay.
Espanola is
It's
able
not
to have
used
their
when
own.
you say no,
No.
Inwood, Manitoulin and whatever.
No.
You could have the
The
board
police
just representing the
service.
Espanola Zone.
Be a little careful here because there's major changes occurring here, okay?
Yeah.
Well, I know
There
they're
are
wrong.
changes to it.
Okay,
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
you know, so we don't know what the final
We have no
result
idea.
is, but,
No, but I'm just saying as it is now.
But we
it
don't,
would
and
be-
it still wouldn't be us that determine your board, it's the Police Service Act that determines your board.
I think we'd all be in the same boat on that
Mhm.
one, is that it's
It's
all
the problem
guided
change.
by the Police Services Act at that
Right.
point.
Okay, so, number 21, how much influence can a police board have on what information is reported to it by the detachment commander? So the OPP has a standardized OPP Police Services Board reporting tool is now available to help detachment commanders ensure police services boards and other stakeholders receive timely, accurate, and accountable police services information in a consistent manner and to assist police service boards with fulfilling their legislative responsibilities. The OPP has been working diligently to enhance its accountability and reporting transparency to Police Services Board and the municipalities it serves. The PSB reporting tool positions detachment commanders to respond to increasing demands for information and to support the effective reporting of detachment efforts to meet local public safety objectives. So the report that is generated is like a standard report, but that doesn't take away from the conversation you have from your detachment commander.
so the Police Services Board could ask for something that's non-standard if it's reasonable, okay?
And there's allocation for that. The other thing too that I'll add to this is we don't wait for the quarterly meeting, for example. I don't know how often you have them here now, but for example, we have a monthly, we're set up on a monthly reporting process. And our monthly reporting is sent to the town's CAO, for example, that will make sure that it gets to the chair of the police services board on a monthly basis. So we don't necessarily have to wait till we meet on a quarterly basis or when our meeting is.
Right.
And the data within the detachment area can be related to just the area responsibility of the
It's
police services
in the
board.
area of responsibility.
Okay.
Number 22, can the police board request targeted enforcement as part of regular duties? For example, specific area designated for increased speed enforcement. And again, it's kind of a common thread through the answers, is the detachment commander will provide services that are operationally feasible as advised by the police board. Number 23, how will the OPP deal with requests for criminal record checks? So the OPP does conduct criminal record checks for individuals directly, and proceeds are credited to the municipality. However, the OPP does not conduct any third-party criminal record checks. Third-party criminal record checks are criminal record checks that are done on someone else's behalf, i.e. a company for an employee, for example. The OPP does not at this time engage in this activity. Residents of Espanola will be able to attend either the highway location or the downtown location to drop off the criminal record check application. Does that answer that?
Just to make sure I got that, the company for an employee. So I know volunteers, we ask for record checks now. So would that fall under that third party one?
People have to make
We don't
applications.
do third party.
No? Oh.
Third parties, like, in some areas, they might have a company that,
Well, I wondered how
they're charging
volunteers
to come in and saying, we want all of our employees to have background checks. It's a revenue thing for that area, and we don't engage in that.
No,
It has to
Third
be
parties when the
individual.
company comes.
Like Dom,
And-
they
and
say
gets-
Like, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying, volunteers don't fall
They
under
come
that,
individually.
even though they're doing it for
Yeah, they'll bring a letter from the
Yeah.
place that they're volunteer for.
Right.
The letter will request a vulnerable
Yeah.
sector check for
And we do
instance.
that,
We do that,
yeah.
but we don't do the third party checks.
But that's because of the rules, because of criminal record checks processed through the RCMP. We all have to abide by the same regulation, the rules on that. So that's why neither one of us do it.
Okay.
Number 24, please provide a summary of legislation 26714 as it applies to transition contract, and confirm that only in year 4 does the property count as provided by MPAC become effective billing. So Ontario Regulation 26714 was enacted January 1st, 2015, and this deals with how the OPP bills municipalities for policing. The regulation is specific to municipalities currently policed by the OPP. New municipalities that amalgamate with the OPP need to therefore go through a transition contract before being integrated into the current OPP billing model. And impact counts are a factor in the billing model, not the transition contract. Okay.
Yep.
Number 25, are the costs of the analyst, 2 detective constables, and community safety officer included in the quote for the town and FTE count? If so, I assume these positions support the entire Espanola detachment area, so the year-end reconciliation would include credit for time spent outside the time of Espanola. The transition contract is based on FTE and availability hours calculation. The municipality will receive a reconciliation report, which is based on actuals, and any adjustment will be addressed at that time. The license to occupy will contain an appendix which will allow the OPP to determine the role of staff reporting to this location. Staffing and reporting at this location will be at the discretion of the OPP. So this was actually addressed earlier in the discussions we had today with regards to the facility itself and how the license to occupy and that works. So the transition contract is based on hours of service, and then remember from the presentation, it's 1,417 per member. If we meet those hours, then your cost is that cost. If we don't meet those hours, then you get a rebate for that. Having said that, if the question is pertaining to the fact that it is non-frontline and that there are times when that frontline officer are reporting to one of the other communities, the license to occupy will have an appendix which will state that the OPP has the discretion to put any employee in that office that they see fit in order to satisfy the needs of the operations. Because remember, we're not in one building. If you remember that originally we were in those discussions about a single building, and because we didn't really get there, we've given you an operational plan which deals with the 2 buildings. But one of the things that you give up in that is the fact that that building we will occupy, but you don't get to say who reports out of that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that was that question.
No, that actually wasn't, because at the time of that question getting worded, we weren't aware of the 2-building proposition.
Yeah.
Basically, let's just use the analyst as an example. If he is doing stat reports for the Manitoulin,
Correct?
we won't be billed for his time.
Right, because his time will be dedicated to Manitoulin. at
Thank
that
you.
point.
That was
Yeah.
really where the question was going, and that was prior to us knowing about the 2-building approach.
In relationship to that, wouldn't that analyst be part of the overhead that we're paying for officer hours? Once that we're off the transition contract and we're into calls for service,
Yeah.
that analyst position is really supporting each hour per service,
Exactly.
eh? And the more hours per service you have, the more you're paying for analyst time, and the fewer, the less.
Well, but then that's right, but that is in the base cost.
Yeah. Okay.
So everyone across the province pays for the share of that base.
Yeah.
Number 26, I think we're at. Case number 26. Will the town have a dedicated sergeant on duty day shift ×7 with possible exception of sick day and so on? The plan, Espanola Manitoulin org chart identifies 2 sergeant or supervision positions for each shift. There will be 4 frontline platoons consisting of 12 uniform frontline positions, of which there will be 1 sergeant and 6 constables assigned to the Espanola zone. The remaining 5 positions, which is 1 sergeant and 4 constables, although assigned to the Manitoulin zone, will still be available for deployment to the Espanola zone if necessary. Should scheduled platoon members be unavailable to attend to an urgent call for service within their assigned zone, i.e. on other calls in court or way on training, officers from other neighboring zones and or detachments, as well as the CSO and court officers will respond. The integrated service model essentially combines all available officers within patrol zones and neighboring areas to provide a large number of officers to draw from for major occurrences to respond to any call for service should scheduled members be unavailable. This model also provides flexibility in terms of overall supervision.
Just one quick question. The sergeant, does he do patrols? He's not just sitting in the office all day, he's out on the road as well?
The sergeants are on the road, members overseeing their activities. To elaborate on the point of the sergeant calls in sick, so the model called for 2 sergeants per platoon. So for example, you have the sergeant in the Espanola zone, and you have the sergeant in the Manitoulin zone. For the Espanola one is on vacation or called in sick. The sergeant in the integrated service delivery model also applies to the supervision model, or to the integration model. For example, the sergeant in Manitoulin, for example, doesn't have an anchor on his car. That sergeant is then expected to be fully engaged in the supervisory activities of all of the members of that platoon, regardless of where they are in the cluster. So the supervision level would be there in that instance, and if there's something that required a sergeant to attend a scene, it would either be the second sergeant on that platoon, for whatever reason, if they're tied up in an occurrence. Going back to our integrated service delivery model, that also applies to supervision. That may mean, depending what the circumstances, if it's big enough and serious enough, we might have to have a sergeant come up from the Sudbury detachment. We might have to have one come up from the Blind River detachment. The other piece in there too is we also have an overall supervisory capacity with our comm center sergeants. So for example, pursuit. And if there's no sergeant on duty to monitor or engage, or for whatever reason they're tied up and they're not cued into this, the comm center sergeant basically oversees that pursuit, if you want, if you want to call it that, and has the authority of any other sergeant in the OPP to supervise, monitor it, disengage it, anything that may have an impact on public safety, to intervene.
Number 27, is a pocket dial 911 counted as a call for service for the billing purposes after transition? The short answer is yes. The long answer is pursuant to section 4.1 of the Adequacy and Effectiveness of Police Services Regulation. Under the Police Services Act, a uniformed member shall respond forthwith to a 911 dispatch regardless of a possible network malfunction and proceed to the location treating the incident as an emergency until proven otherwise. This type of call is reflected in the Operational 2 Calls for Service Billing Work Group, referred to the Municipal Billing and General Information document, publicly available at the www.opp.ca for further information on the billing law. But the short answer is yes, a 911 hang-up is a 911 hang-up. It is a call for service. Number 28. If someone calls 911, but it is not a true call for service, does it count in calls for service? I.e., if someone calls looking for looking for information on mental health providers or other information type request, how is it handled in dispatch? So when a 911 call is downstream for a police response, the dispatching officer responds accordingly. Ultimately, it is the officer that enters the information into the records management system and assigns the appropriate call for service type. 911 is for emergency purposes only and is not intended for information purposes. The OPP will work with your municipality to provide messaging on the use of 911. So the question is actually kind of multiple level. Again, remember I was going back, if you need information on how 911 works, I'll let you know that. But when you call 911 and you dial 911 and they pick up the phone on the other end, they're not there to answer a question. They will simply say, 911, what is your emergency? Police, fire, ambulance. They're not there to talk to you. They're going to ask you. Their job is simply to direct to police, fire, ambulance. That's the primary PSAP. The secondary PSAP is the dispatcher. So if that person on the phone says fire, they're going to be sent to fire. If they say police, they're going to be sent to police. If it gets sent to police, that dispatcher then has that conversation with that person on the phone. If they're asking what time it is, they'll say this isn't the appropriate thing. You should be calling the police to find out what time it is. If it is an actionable call for service, it will be dispatched to that officer. The officer will determine the response type as it's entered into the computer. So it's kind of a...
Well, it makes sense. I mean, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the end, using the term 911 was probably not the right term to use.
Yeah.
But basically, what it comes down to is unless an officer, and remember, these questions are
Yeah.
coming from the community and
That's right.
some misinformation. You've been through this in enough communities.
Yeah.
Basically, it comes down to no, it's not a call for service. We're not going to get billed anything extra for it.
That's right. If it's what time is it?
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Take
Yeah.
the people.
And that's what it comes down to.
Emergency call.
That's right. So that was the first set of questions that were sent to us a couple weeks ago. And then Cynthia sent another set of questions, which I received on Monday. And then to not discount them, I wanted to make sure they were answered as well. The majority of these questions, though, were already asked in the first part, but to make sure that there was nothing missed or a different nuance in the question was missed, I want to make sure I answered all of them as well. So number one on this list was presently for medical emergencies that require an ambulance, there is a system set in place to notify the Espanola Fire Department if the ambulance can't arrive within 10 minutes. The fire department personnel with first aid training are dispatched to attend to the person until the ambulance arrives. What type of arrangement, can this type of arrangement continue with the OPP? So the OPP would not change the way your community responds to medical emergencies. And this is a question that would need to be addressed with your public safety answering point providers for both fire and ambulance. So basically, my response is this isn't a police question, and whatever policies you have in place now for your ambulance and fire, we assume would stay in place. We wouldn't change that at all. That has nothing to do with policing. Okay. Number two, does the OPP conduct patrols with 2 officers in a car? Under what circumstances would this occur when policing the town of Espanola Zone? To maximize constable safety, the OPP policy directs mandatory policing standards to be met to provide safety and backup coverage. The OPP policy directs mandatory 2 constable patrols be assigned during specific hours of operation. The discretion in use of a 2 uniform member patrol car shall rest with the detachment commander with respect to other situations. Where, in the opinion of a shift supervisor, a situation requires the use of a 2 uniform member patrol car or additional personnel, the shift supervisor shall have the authority to implement its use. And that's correct from our policy. Does that help? Number 3, the proposal provides for 4 platoons containing 1 sergeant and 6 constables to patrol the town of Espanola Zone and the Espanola Zone Massey, Webwood, Baldwin, and Nairn areas. This appears to be enough resources to provide 5 officers per shift. including when considering sickness, vacation, and training absences. Is there a minimum level of manning whereby officers could be drawn in from other shifts, other areas, and overtime to be utilized to ensure the on-shift manning doesn't fall below a certain level? If so, what would that minimum on-shift level be? So basically, we answered this previously, the majority of the question. There's several questions in this one. So the planned Manitoulin Espanola org chart identifies 2 supervision positions for each shift. There will be 4 frontline platoons consisting of 12 uniform frontline positions, of which there will be 1 sergeant and 6 constables assigned to the Espanola zone. The remaining 5 positions, 1 sergeant, 4 constables, although assigned to Manitoulin, will still be available for deployment to the Espanola zone if necessary. Should scheduled platoon members be unavailable to attend for an urgent call for service within their assigned zone, officers from other neighboring zones and or detachments will respond. The integrated service delivery model essentially combines all available officers within patrol zones and neighboring areas to provide a larger number of officers to draw from for major occurrences to respond to any calls for service should scheduled members be unavailable. This model also provides flexibility in terms of overall supervision. So I don't know.
That's pretty much, I think we've pretty much answered that in the previous.
Number 4, the OPP doesn't typically do bylaw enforcement unless it is requested as an enhancement. How does the OPP typically help community do bylaw enforcement? And again, as answered previously, the OPP can provide bylaw enforcement if mutually agreed upon with the exception of building code and or animal control bylaws. However, it is our experience that it's more cost efficient for a municipality to have its own bylaw officers managing and enforcing municipal bylaws. The OPP is available to assist and provide support in relation to bylaw enforcement. However, bylaw calls are billable under the OPP billing model in the town's billing method following the transition contract period. Okay, so I think we answered that one before. The next question is regards to foot patrol. I don't know if you want me to answer that one again.
It's been done.
It's been done.
The next question was a bit more detailed than the previous one, which talked about the programs in schools. In the last 4 years, Espanola Police Service has provided about 100 hours per year of programming to the various schools. Your proposed staffing shows 1 full-time community safety officer. What duties does a community safety officer have besides providing school safety programs? So this one I'm going to make sure that we identify here was the community policing is a fundamental principle under which all of our services are delivered. The OPP is known to deliver a wide range of community wellness programs across the province, and here's a list of some of the programs delivered within the Espanola Manitoulin detachment. So the OPP Kids program, which is knowledge, issues, decisions, and supports. There's community presentations on drugs, internet safety, bullying, driving, elder abuse, crime prevention, elder abuse prevention, frauds and scams, etc. There are OPP recruitment initiatives, and there's CEPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. There's typically 1 community safety officer per detachment assigned to administer these programs, and that officer is supported by all frontline officers and members of different specialized units depending on the nature of the program. For example, any uniformed member can participate in school presentations or take part in local community safety initiatives such as Project Freeze, which involves the issuing of a positive ticket, which could be a coupon for a free drink from a local partnership or convenience store. Any community member caught exercising good safety practices such as wearing a bicycle helmet or life jackets could be a part of this as well. Members of the crime unit, regional community, street crime units, and other OPP subject matter experts are also available to assist in providing information sessions within the community on topics such as internet safety, bullying prevention, seniors issues, fraud, scam prevention, traffic safety, etc. The OPP Kids program, which is the knowledge, issues, and supports, was developed in conjunction with frontline police officers and professional educators to ensure the content meets current student needs. OPP Kids program will cover topics such as youth and law, peer-to-peer relationships, drug awareness, and online social media awareness. This program would in all likelihood be implemented within your school should amalgamation take place. The detachment commander will work very closely with Espanola Police Services Board in regards to local objectives and priorities and further programming needs of your community. Is there any other questions with regards to the school?
No.
Okay. And then the next question, number 7, again deals with fundraisers and presentations. In the last 4 years, Espanola Police Service provided about 60 hours per year of community services at events such as participation in fundraisers, presentations throughout the community, police station tours, and other community events. Would this be considered part of the duties of the community safety officer and or proactive police in Espanola? And again, the detachment commander will provide services that are operationally feasible as advised by the Espanola Police Services Board. If this practice is followed by the Espanola Police Service, that it could be discussed as a local priority and objective between the Espanola Police Services Board and the detachment commander. So those are all the questions that we received in writing, and I wasn't sure if there was anything else. All of these, again, are going to be available to Cynthia. You have them now. I'm going to give them to her electronically so she can post them however you see fit, however your website provides, so you have it. These are public documents, so you're free to share them and the answers. Is there anything else that we can help you with today?
I had a few more questions, okay?
Okay, we can try. Some of them also need program area expertise.
Sure.
But if it's operational, easy.
The post-transition contract switches to base plus calls for service model to build a community. What types of activities does a proactive policing done under the $192 base service include? Just give us an idea. When you're charging $192 per property for base service for proactive policing, what type of general activities would be considered in that area?
So I don't have like the list. We actually have a breakdown of like what kind of activities are in it. But it's basically that $191 is everything that needs to happen in order for a member of your community to pick up the phone and call police. So it involves general patrol, it involves directed patrol, it involves anything that you need that's beyond that call for service portion, which is dedicated to that specific individual because they have a specific need for policing. I don't know if that helps. We actually have the list. I don't know if you've seen the list from other communities and the list of the calls for service. So you'll see in those lists, a lot of them are online, so you can see the identified list. If you look at a busier detachment that has more calls for service, you'll see that there's more items in that list. What it is when you actually receive your bill, when you enter into the billing model, there's never a zero listed, so you'll not get pages and pages of zeros, like you're not incurring that kind of call. But basically that 191 is everything that is provided on a daily basis for the ability for anyone in your community to pick up that phone and call for police service. Does that help? So that's regular.
They can call for it and also acquire it.
Yeah,
Right.
the
Yeah.
proactive.
Yeah.
The
That's right.
proactive
That's right,
side.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to get out, and it's good for the public to understand what's part of that base, okay?
That's right.
Calls for service is pretty easy to understand.
That's
If you
right, yeah.
have to go, and it's gonna take some time to address an issue,
That's right.
we're gonna be billed for that.
That's right.
But the base service, okay, is sort of that sort of standard, okay? I was sort of wondering what it included. In some cases, maybe charges are laid as part of your base service.
So, I guess if I'm understanding
Yeah.
things correctly, probably the easy way to understand it, or the answer is anything reactive is generally speaking a calls for service or a billable call for service. Anything that is proactive, generated by the officer, is not billable, is not generated for call for service. I'll use the example, the officer conducts a traffic stop. You know, that's proactive, that's not a billable call for service. The officer proactively, while dealing with those individuals, there was a crime committed, they're wanted in an area, or perhaps drugs are found in the vehicle, or alcohol is found in the vehicle, enforcement action is taken accordingly. That is a proactive measure on the part of the officer. That is not a billable call for service.
Okay.
And that's
That's
sort of what I
actually
was
pretty
trying
good
to
way
get at.
to say it.
So generally speaking, I'm speaking in very general terms, generally anything that's reactive, and the fact that we're called towards.
You have to have a third person for that though, right?
Not necessarily.
Well, at least,
No.
at least a second one.
That's right. And if it's, for example, like anything that's occurring like on the provincial highway or anything like that, it has nothing to do with you, right? So-
Yeah. Anything I do to make you do something would be not a proactive call, it would be a reactive,
Anything
right?
we react to is essentially billable.
Okay.
Anything that our officers are doing proactively, a traffic ticket.
Yeah, I think
to
I
stop the
understand.
car, dealing with that person, that's a proactive action by that officer. That issue of a traffic ticket is not a billable item.
Okay.
Right, but now
Exactly.
having said
Well-
that, that traffic ticket leads to something much bigger.
If it's
That
in there.
something much bigger, which leads to an investigation, is a billable call for service.
Right, if it can lead to further warrants in the community, for example,
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Okay, well, that's good.
But
That,
sorry, go ahead.
that makes it a little clearer.
But the given incident in itself, even if it results in charges of all kinds of wonderful things, is not a billable call for
Well, it
service.
depends.
It
So-
depends
so
where-
I wouldn't-
Yeah, and I mean, if it goes on from there into something else in the community, obviously that becomes a call for service.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
it was an impaired driver, is that
Yep.
a call for service then?
Proactive, typically speaking, the impaired,
Impaired crime prevention.
yeah, crime prevention measures, for example.
Okay,
Is what?
But that
Focus
involves
Not-
patrols.
yeah.
Yeah.
that's
Like
good.
the community service officer going in the schools proactively to deliver presentation, that's not a call for service.
Yeah, oh, that's good, thank you.
Do you gauge the service that you're going to provide according to the amenities we have in our community? Because although we're small, we have relatively all the amenities that a larger center has, but in a smaller capacity. Because we got the rec office, we got the mall, we got the hospital, we've got all of these things. And not like, for instance, maybe Baldwin or Nairn, which doesn't have that type of thing. So when you're policing, is you take into consideration all these things that I've just talked about? Like when we know we need policing, we need representation at the hospital, we know we need representation in schools, we know all of that. So is it done on a level that will suit all of the citizens of Espanola?
Absolutely, and again, that goes back to what we continue to say is, whatever your goals and objectives are relayed through the detachment commander at your police services board and in your council, like, you know, we're not gonna, do things that, we're not gonna say no if it's something that is really a priority for your community. Having said that, everything you ask for, you might not get, because the detachment commander may say, well, that's not really operationally feasible for us.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? But although we're a large organization, we still cater to the needs of each individual community, because every community is different.
Yes.
I think what you were alluding to when you mentioned it, Your Worship, I had that written down here. And I guess there's been cases that was brought up amongst us before where down at the hospital, if they get a person come in that's aggressive for whatever reason, they call, that would be a call for service.
Correct.
Because I know they don't have security down there, they call our people to go down there. So if they call, they would get an officer, but it would be billed as a call for service. That's right, that's what I thought. I just wanted to be sure.
Irregardless
still
of where
perform
that
that
individual comes from,
Yeah.
call for service that occurs
Mhm.
in the area is a call for
That's
service.
right, and I figured it would be, but we would still provide that service to the hospital, with no doubt.
Oh, yeah.
And another one there, relating to workstations, you're gonna use the Espanola Police Station as sort of an administrative center, and there's two workstations in there, okay? You had various offices plus two workstations. Would the officers doing on patrol stop in from time to time and use that?
So going back to the mobile workstation, we don't have fixed computers unless it's like your administrative staff, for
Sure.
example. All our frontline officers are working off mobile workstations. So for example, if they're coming to the downtown office, let's call it, it would be set up where we'd have a docking station there. It would just basically park the cruiser, take out their computer or mobile workstation, walk in the building, plug it in that docking station,
work right
and
there.
and they're all set up.
And that could be any time of the day.
Yes.
Day or night.
24/7,
Yes.
that's 24/7. The nice thing about that is that officer has that mobile workstation. It doesn't matter where they are in the province, what building we walk into, we're typically equipped with docking stations wherever we go for that purpose.
Or they could go in and talk to the person doing court, I'll call it the court officer in preparation for a case coming up or whatever it is. Okay, I was pretty sure that was the case.
Anybody else have questions?
I don't know if Bill's got another one there.
Well, go ahead, if you
No,
guys
I
have
just had
anything.
one because I know, just like over here, I answered a while ago about something and it said that would go under the OPP, whatever, general fund of the province or whatever. right now, originally we talked about one new building, and then we found out that we can accommodate it with your highway location in our downtown. Down the road, I know we have the transition period. After the transition period, they decide they need a new building. Does it go on the tax base here, or does it go under the provincial OPP building, whatever?
Well, it would depend. So, like we said in the earlier meeting, so right now, when we were originally in the discussions, it was the thought that perhaps a new building would be built. Because it never really launched, we gave you a proposal based on the 2 existing structures. One thing that does though is realizing that our site on the highway is old, as is your building, but what it does is it alleviates that pressure on both the sites. So just as an example, and I'm not privy to that information, let's just for argument's sake say Espanola was due for a refit in 10 years. Because we've actually satisfied and solved a lot of needs at both of the buildings, that may put Espanola to 20 years. So let's just forget about the idea that it's imminent. If there was to be a retrofit in this area, you're probably looking at anywhere from 15 to 20 years from now from being a new building.
But it would fall under the provincial structure.
Well, it kind of would. It kind of would. What would happen at that point if a new building was built? It would be at the discretion of the OPP, and it would be placed wherever the OPP decided. So it might very well not be here.
No, that's right.
It very well would be not in here, and more than likely in another community, just because we don't know that, right? We're guessing what's going to happen in 20 years. But what would happen at that point? The town at that point then would pay the OPP a portion based on a per property basis. Because now you would be under this model, you're not paying because you're paying for your own building, right? So you're going to pay for the upkeep, retrofit, and everything else. So you'll have that one-time cost of retrofitting both buildings, and then you will be paying your own upkeep on your building.
Which might be very well the same amount as
Yeah,
maintaining our own as being into a new one. Because then you'd be out of this one.
That's right. And then the new building, again, that goes back to the whole, if you were to build a building that accommodated both, let's call it the downtown and the highway site, which combines both the municipal portion and the provincial portion, at that point, as we discussed earlier, you would be in a position then where you would be the landlord, and the province of Ontario would be paying you rent back for that portion of the building, which is not considered Espanola, which is...
Now it would be a reversal.
It would be a reversal. We would be paying you.
Councilor Billy, you had another comment?
Yeah, it may be redundant or not necessary, but right now you're going to have one civilian in Espanola and one civilian out on the highway.
Yeah, the way it's set up, the two administrative staff, and the proposed structure is one in the, let's call it the downtown office, and one on the highway office.
Are there any economies of scale that in the long term, the community sees if you had everything in one building?
I'm sorry?
For example, let's say we built a new police station in Espanola.
And everybody's in one building?
Yeah, would that mean you still need 2 civilians?
Yes.
Okay, so it doesn't really change much.
Well,
Because,
changes,
well, yeah.
yeah, I was just gonna say, right now, a transition contract is an FTE-based contract.
Sure.
So you're paying very linear per those bodies.
Yeah,
Where things change is in year 4, when it goes into the OPP billing model.
yeah.
So then it's not linked directly to those FTEs anymore. And it really would be at the discretion, and if they did operational reviews, how many staff are in there, how many staff are out there, that's.
Sure.
It could stay 2, it could go 1, it could go 3.
Yeah.
So basically,
Doesn't
the
change
operational,
the cost.
you have to remember, their support staff to all of these operational needs that we have. So the operational needs that we have, if we're staying the same, and it calls for 2 administrative assistants, it'll stay that same, or it could be more, it could be less. But we wouldn't know that until we do
Sure.
those operational assessment needs.
Okay, I was just looking
Everybody in
at,
the province then pays for all of the staffing that's servicing all municipalities across the province.
That's right.
On a
The
per
province.
property basis
Sure.
on the base side, and then there's a bit of a tailored usage charge on the cost of service.
I was just thinking about, are there some benefits, let's say if you consolidate, or some financial benefits to the community, okay?
Long-term
Because we're
revenue.
gonna have a mortgage on a building and we're
Right.
gonna lease it out. But if it helps to reduce our costs in other ways, then maybe that's a consideration.
Centralizing
You-
services.
Yeah.
You would have a long-term revenue issue or stream that would be coming in then through the provincial lease part of the lease on
Sure.
the building.
Sure. Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
No other questions or comments?
Now, if there is other questions that you have, though, like, you know, you might walk away and go, oh, I wish I'd said that, please make sure that you send them to Cynthia, and then she'll get them back to us. And also, don't forget that we are available to come back for a public Q&A session, should you want that. I know that we were discussing that earlier, that you had thought maybe that would be in after Christmas sometime. Just let us know, we can make sure that that is scheduled. And then if we have any more facilities questions, of course, we know that direction is, we'll bring in whoever you need to help with that.
Very good.
I have a question about grants, just while we're on here.
Yeah,
You guys have 1,000 officers with the CPP grants.
yeah.
So do we, but of course, those are disappearing in the new year, and it's gonna be the police
Modernization.
grant.
Yeah.
So the municipalities will be responsible for applying for
Yep.
that grant and putting.
Exactly.
Which
Exactly.
is, that's gonna be a lot of work, because you need to know a lot of operations in order to do that, because all the grant that applying for that grant is going to be improvements in community collaboration, so
That's
there's
right.
gonna be a lot of knowledge about what's happening
Exactly.
operationally.
Exactly. So the detachment commander will assist, which is they'll provide any input that they need for the grant application, but it's municipal responsibility to apply for any grant. Yeah.
And that ties into, for example, I'm already going through this in some of our areas, and we've tied this into our mobilization engagement programs that we've already kicked off in community ABC, for example. And we're drafting the modernization grant with regards to a program that we've created in the community, but that was done in consultation with the board. So, and then in my case, for example, as the detachment commander, I am assisting the municipality in applying for that specific grant, looking ahead, using enhancement to the community programs. So, of course, to your point, the community or the town, CO really has to be aware of what those programs are to be able to effectively fill out those grants, because they are complicated.
I'm expecting there'd be like 80 hours put into that
Yeah,
grant
it's
application.
But you can use some of the information you have from other communities to support the community to make that grant application.
But we don't make the grant application.
No, we understand that, but you have to fill it in,
Make it
help
available.
us,
Yes.
help us develop the story and
Yeah.
and the rationale for it.
Okay, I would like to thank the representatives from the OPP for being here and giving us a lot of information to check over and look at. At this point in time, the special meeting of council is hereby adjourned. All in favor? Carried.